Welcome back to this special edition of the County Seat. We're coming to you from the Utah Association of Counties headquarters in Murray, Utah. Joining us, Robert Kirk, the Treasurer of Utah County, Brent Gardner, Executive Director of the Utah Association of Counties. We're kind of reviewing the stories, the top stories of the year. First block, we talked about condition of probation and the beer tax. Now we're going to go on to a tax called TRCC, which is the conventions and cultural tourism restaurant tax. And that generates quite a bit of money for counties. Let's start just a little bit with this issue here and get a little background of how much impact that has on the counties.
You know, Utah County, like all of the counties, rely on their TRCC funding. Specifically in Utah County, we have just been involved in the construction of a new convention center, which a big portion of that those funding is coming from TRCC money. The concern that I've got primarily is that when you go out and you build a structure like a convention center, it requires bonding. We don't have that money in our coffers in the county, so you have to go out and bond for that. And one of the revenue streams or the revenue sources for the payment of those bonds is TRCC. And that's a commitment for sometimes 20 to 25 years. And so if you start playing around with the TRCC funding, that has an impact on bonds and rating agencies, and they're looking for stability in that payment stream to come in for the repayment of those bonds when they go out to issue. So, you know, it's more than just, you know, coming up with the funding. It's paying for bond projects that are going on. We have several projects in Utah County that we're using TRCC money for. The convention center is one. We're building a new museum up at Thanksgiving Point, a children's museum that will be a big asset to our county. And so there are several things, trails that we're redeveloping. All of that is impacted by TRCC funds.
Utah County in particular has been a subject of litigation. How did this get started, Brent?
Well, they along with the Restaurant Association, have been proposing legislation over the last 4 or 5 years seeking to change the restaurant tax to something else. There's been variations on what their proposals have been. I think at this point they've gotten to the situation where they felt like rather than deal with it legislatively, they may have to try and take a chance in court, which I think is very unfounded in terms of what the statute says and the way the counties have been complying with the statute. So, but still, it's there, and you have to defend it, and you'll have to see where it goes.
Well, they're claiming that the way it's being taxed is unfair, but the legislation they seek doesn't exactly seem to be consistent with trying to amend that problem.
That's correct. There's never been legislation proposed by the plaintiffs to correct the problem they brought up in the lawsuit. There is a distinction, however, in their case from the way you described it, Chad, and that is that in their case, the way they filed it, they haven't claimed that the case is unfair, the statute is unfair, because a statute can be unfair. By that I mean the legislature has authority constitutionally to distinguish between who gets taxed and who doesn't. For example, they can put a higher income tax on you than they can someone else. That may be unfair, but it's still within their authority. What they've claimed in the lawsuit is it's unconstitutional, which means it's been applied unfairly to different parties, and that's far different than being unfair. Unconstitutional is a much higher standard, and I don't think that there's any way that they're going to be able to succeed in claiming the legislature doesn't have the authority to do tax at different levels.
But at one point, they actually, if I'm not mistaken, they were actually seeking to get some of that money for them directly instead of going through the counties, so they could spend it through their association to promote restaurants.
That's correct. That was one of their early proposals, which failed.
So I suppose that kind of what the complaint is and what the action is being taken to amend it legislatively doesn't seem to match up. It's kind of interesting. Do you see anything coming up this year?
I don't know. We expect that it will because it has every year for the last five years or so. So I'm anticipating that there'll be something filed.
Okay, I guess we're going to have to cover this again on the county seat. We'll be right back with our year-end roundup. We've gone through 2 rounds, TRCC and condition of probation and beer tax. When we come back, we'll take on issue number 3. Stay with us.
What do you picture when you hear Rich County, Utah? Bear Lake adventure, snowmobile action, pristine skiing, spectacular solitude. Well, if that isn't what first came to mind, then you just don't know Rich County. The Bear Lake Monster Polar Plunge, snowmobiling Monte Cristo, ice fishing Bear Lake, skiing the backcountry, fishing at the Cisco Disco. Come and find out what you never knew you were missing. Rich County, Utah.
What are the words that describe the perfect destination? Finding them all in one place is easy if you know where to look. Millard County in the heart of Utah offers ATV adventures, rock crawling events, art festivals, and nature at its most epic. Millard County, Utah. Find out what you've been searching for.
How would you spend an extra day in Utah Valley? Stay one more day. Visit utahvalley.com to make reservations. Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.